So here we are in the back with our piece that we've pre-cut and marked. And I'm going to position this on that center seam and pin it down the center. Oops. I would start at the waist because it has a tendency to be pulled up if you're not careful. So then I'm going to go upward and pin that piece and then pin it down here at the hip or slightly below the hip, somewhere in that area. So I've got the center marked. And then what I'm going to do is pin the hip next. So we're coming over to the hip. I'm going to cut a little bit here at the waist, a little bit at the hip to kind of free it up. And I'm coming over. I'm going to pin my hip. Try to keep that hip not dropping down. You want it to stay on the mark. I cut that a little too far, but it's okay. And then we're smoothing up. So you're not pushing this fabric over because it's not going to go there. It would create a lot of horizontal pulling. So we're leaving that fullness there. And I'm going to bring my side seam up. And you can see I'm not doing it straight. I am letting it curve because there is a curve. So you're pushing a little fabric over. But if you start to see that there's any kind of like pulling effect, then you know you're pulling it too much. So here's my side seam for the hip area. So that's marked. And then we're going to do the same thing at the side. So you have to clip this because you'll see it is opening up and creating a little V. So then I'm going to mark my side seam. So I've pinned that in place. Just a couple inches. You don't have to go all the way to the underarm. And then we're going to do the same thing with the with darts. Up here at the shoulder, you want to bring it around the neck. I'm going to trim some of this fabric away. I'm going to notch it and bring it over to the shoulder. And then at the princess line, some of the excess fabric will go into a teeny tiny dart. It's not more than a 1/4 inch you're folding, and you're folding, I can actually mark if I want it, where that princess line is. And then I'm going to fold that dart under. And your dart is about 1.5 inches long. So you've made a little dart at the shoulder, pin that in. And then the end of it should be at the princess line. I think I'm going to end it like right about here. And then now we have the place where we're going to take all the extra fabric here and make the 2 darts again. So your first dart is going to be on the princess line. So I'm feeling for that. It's right here. I'm going to take approximately 1/4 inch. Maybe there we go. And then about 1/2 inch, 5/8 inch away, you're going to do your second dart. You don't want your shoulder dart or your waist darts to come past that shoulder line. It should be down here, down a little bit. So I'm going to end my dart like just below that shoulder line. Or I'm sorry, the bust line. And then this one. So same thing. They can come up to the bust line, but don't let them creep up into the shoulder. And then the bottoms will be a little bit shorter. They're maybe 1.5 inches long. So you want to mark everything. I'm going to mark my neckline. My shoulder line. You can cut some out at the armhole. But remember, when you're cutting some away at the armhole, you don't want to cut way in here because you need to have fabric for a seam allowance. So I'm only cutting off enough to just free it up. And then I'm going to start marking the armhole. Remember here, this is where my side seam is, but I'm going to add a little bit for wearing ease. So when I draft the line, I'm going to move it over and angle it because we don't want it to be really pulling very tightly. So once you have everything marked, you take your pieces off, true everything up, pin it together, and let's put it back on and see if it all looks balanced. Okay, so we've taken our front and back sheath and trued up our darts and then pinned everything together to pin fit it. You'll probably want to press the darts and everything so that they're a little bit smoother. And on the inside of the dart, you always clip the seam at the center so that it can open up a little bit and curve into the waist. And so I've gotten this done. And this is the opportunity where you look for how it fits and what adjustments do I still need to make. And so I think that overall it's pretty good. I already took it off and changed the dart because my dart was pointing above the bust and I didn't really like that, so I've moved it down. And when I make changes, I go in with colored pens or pencils. We talked about that in the beginning, that I've used this heavy black line for the sake of you being able to see everything. But coming back in, I'm using a red pencil and I cross out the old line and drew the new lines. When I did my darts, I didn't use the heavy marker. I would suggest that you use maybe a ballpoint pen because your lines are going to be too thick to really see exactly where those darts are. And so I think the darts end in a good spot. They are ending in a good spot here. They're taking up enough, but you can see that we have a little bit of wearing ease. You don't want this so tight that someone can't move. And for now, the skirt is just straight. We didn't flare it out of the side because basically what we're doing is creating the block pattern like you would have done in pattern drafting. After you have this, then you can start to style it and change the look, but at least you have that basic shape. And the shoulder line is in a good spot. The armhole, you can see there's a little bit of wearing ease here. If you were making something with sleeves, we would want maybe a little more wearing ease. But if it's going to be sleeveless, you want it to be tighter. So I would say that this is maybe a little loose under the arm. So I'm going to tighten it up a bit. So again, you're making a few changes to make sure you have the fit you want. And then you will remark the changes and transfer those back to your pattern. Don't forget that step. I've often seen people that made the changes here and then didn't go back and revisit the pattern. So these changes did not become part of the final design. So you want to make sure that you do that. And this dart on the shoulder should really be coming over here on the princess line. So I'm just going to put a red dot where I think that dart should go. And again, I'll take this off the form. I think the waist darts are fine. And I'll just redraft that dart so that it's in the right place. And then you can take and make your pattern, true it up, and then cut it out a full sample and sew it together. One thing on the back you want to think about is the length of your zipper. The part of our body that's the smallest is the waist. So if I only have a small zipper, it's not going to open up enough to get it over the shoulders or to step into the dress. So you have to think about the zipper needs to come down somewhere closer to the full side of the buttocks area. You don't want to go right on the tailbone because you don't want to sit on it. So it's usually up here, and a lot of dresses, the zipper in the back will be 20 or 22 inches. So when you make your sample, do not sew the back shut because you will not be able to get it on the dress form. You can sew a seam on this lower part and still get it over the dress form, but you want to leave that part open. And I'm not sure if you can see this in the video, but on the inside of the darts, you can see I cut the center of the dart so that it can make that curve into the curve of the back. So take this, true up your pattern, make your corrections, and then sew a sample, put the sample on the dress form, and photograph it. So you should have a photo of the front and the back drape, the front and the back pattern, and then the front and the back sewn sample. So happy sewing. So just so you can see how the basic shift relates to a garment, this is a shift dress that I draped, a couple of years ago, and it's in a ponte knit. And this one, we eliminated the darts that would have been here at the center to make it tight because we wanted it to hang more like an open shift. But you can see that there's a side dart, and the dart is below the apex of the bust. And then in the back, I wanted the dart to follow a horizontal seam. So again, this is just more for the detail of the design. And you can see that there's a small dart bringing it in here so that the person from the back looks really slim. And so the dress is out of ponte knit. It has the ruffle at the bottom. You learned ruffling when you took basic sewing. And then this is a railroaded zipper. So sometimes I like to use invisible zippers, but sometimes with the ponte knit, the invisible zipper seems to be really tight. So this is a regular railroaded zipper. And then when we talked about facings, you can see that the inside of this dress is faced to the waist because we wanted it to cover this seam. So this facing would have darts in it and goes around to the front, and it's in a contrasting fabric that contrasts with the trim at the bottom. So the shift dress or the shift pattern that you're making can be used in a lot of different ways. So there's a whole collection of these little shift dresses that are real cute.